To one and all present here, it gives me great pleasure to extend to you all a very warm welcome on behalf of the Ability team. Today, we all have gathered here to be part of panel discussion on innovations and best practices in high-quality data collection, followed by our Ability India launch celebration. On this occasion, it is my distinct honor to introduce Dr. Christopher Robert, founder of Ability Incorporation, a company dedicated to human-visible technology for research and analysis. He is also a research fellow and an adjunct lecturer at Harvard University's John F. Kennedy School of Government. But our time together is very short, so I will just hand off to him. Please welcome Dr. Christopher Robert.
Okay, thanks for the introduction, and thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. Really appreciate it, and we're going to try to move pretty quickly through this our sort of introductory remarks because there are a lot of you here. We've seen your RSVPs, so we know who you are, and we're very pleased that you're here. We think there's a lot of experience and perspective in the room, and so we'd like to get to the part of this panel where we have more discussion and take questions and comments from all of you. So we'll move as briskly as possible through the early stages. So I'm just very briefly going to introduce everybody on the stage here. Again, I'm not going to go through everyone's resumes. Sorry. Technical difficulties. Okay. So, Harvey already introduced me. I just wanted to show a quick photo. This is a photo from a data collection facility that Malik, who I'll introduce in a minute, helped set up in 2009, I believe, for a survey we were doing here in Gujarat. So I've been visiting Ahmedabad very happily and doing some work on and off in Gujarat for a number of years now, and very happy to be back today. So Sharon Barnhart, who's here she's visiting from across the street at IIM Ahmedabad, where she's on the faculty. And Sharon has done a number of research projects. I haven't quite kept up with all of them here in India from the time that she was doing her PhD onward at IFMR and here at IIM Ahmedabad. And so she'll be talking a bit about sort of the methods that she's used over the years and her perspectives on this topic of collecting quality data. So Neil Patel on the end here is joining us from WASDE, and he's a co-founder of the organization, and he's been also working here in Gujarat for some years, and also he and I were both here working on our PhDs at the same time. We didn't know each other at the time, but I'm very happy to know him now. And we both set up social enterprises to pursue the goals that we're passionate about. So he does a lot of work with voice-based systems, and so he'll be talking about data quality in that context. And Sharon Weir is with us from the fourth wheel. Sharon has a background in economics and development studies and has been working with a number of government bodies and NGOs and CSR departments on how to better sort of conceptualize, implement, and importantly assess social development programs. So Malik is not on the stage. He's here. You'll see him running around sweating a lot and seeing to everything. He's our associate director here for Dugility India. After the panel discussion part, I'll talk for maybe 5 minutes about Dugility India and what we're doing and what Malik is helping us accomplish. And the dinner and the celebration tonight is a lot of it's about Malik and his efforts here to grow our enterprise here in India. So I'll just start with a few remarks about, from my point of view, what quality data is. So quality data is data you can actually trust. So it's a relatively simple concept. So if you aggregate quality data, if you visualize it, if you make decisions based on it, then you're not making a mistake. And so this is actually, I think most people wouldn't argue with this. But in today's world, there's just tremendous enthusiasm around big data, and data visualization, and data-driven decision making. And I have to admit that in my own policy work and in my own advocacy, I push people very hard to say, hey, when you're making policy decisions, you should actually let the data inform your decisions, and you should be evidence-based in the work that you do. But while I'm a very strong advocate for this in general, I have to admit that if the data is bad data, if the data is not accurate, then you're actually doing yourself a disservice by making decisions based on that data. And so I think this is something that, with all the enthusiasm about data and big data and visualization in particular is very exciting because you see really cool charts and graphs and things you can drag and drop around, and it's all very exciting. But if the small data behind that big data, each and every data point, if that data isn't accurate in the end, then what good is the fancy chart? It's really not very good at all. So the question is, how does quality data get collected? I think everybody on this stage, and I think actually many of you in the audience actually spend your lives working on this question of quality data. So I don't have any particular monopoly on this subject. What I will say is that for one thing, there are many different ways that we collect quality data. So later when I tell you a little more about, or if you've been to our website, you know what we do at Survey CTO and at Ability. We focus a lot on enumerators who run around and interview people. They might inspect health facilities. They might go to schools and see if the teachers are there or not. When these enumerators are doing their work, they may use paper, they may use paper forms, they may fill out booklets, they may use tablets or mobile phones. They may be interviewing people or inspecting things, or they may conduct focus groups, which is a fair bit more complicated and involves more sort of facilitation and less just simple interviewing. There are these voice IVR systems that Neil will talk a bit more about, where you have people interacting. Maybe there are automated phone calls, maybe there are information systems that people are dialing into, and maybe data is coming from those. SMS surveys, I'm sure everybody has been tortured with SMSs. You can blast out SMSs to ask people questions and then hope that maybe 1% of them reply with an answer. There's lab experiments where you can bring people together, observe their behavior, and collect data based on that. Web surveys, these are becoming very common for if you have well-connected, sort of more sophisticated respondents. Crowdsourced data collection is something that's sort of coming up. There's an organization, Premise, we've become aware of recently. IPA is doing, Innovations for Poverty Action is doing some experiments with, there are so many people around the world who have smartphones or tablets. If you want to find out, the price of oranges in markets across Nigeria, kind of like the Uber concept, like why not task people and offer, a few rupees to everybody who sends a photo of price from a market, or all around for gas prices and this kind of thing. So there's this idea of crowdsourcing data collection that I think some people are starting to use, and technology is enabling. And then you have administrative records, point of sale systems. You've got all kinds of other ways that data might be coming to you, and in some sense collected automatically as part of business or social transactions. So, in particular, when we think about people, enumerators who are going out and collecting data, whether it's in inspections or interviews or this kind of thing, there's a very strong trend moving from paper-based methods to digital methods. So moving from paper and pencil to tablet and mobile phone-based surveys. And I'll talk about a few of the advantages of that. Obviously, so our company is set up to help people with this transition. But there are many software platforms available now. There are more every day. I was at a conference recently where someone was complaining that there were 46 platforms for digital data collection that they were trying to review, and they were really annoyed that there were so many options. So the options and the features are increasing every day. And the basic idea is we're trying to get away from this, when you get a lot of paper, you do a lot of surveys, there's some room here in Ahmedabad where our surveys of farmers throughout Gujarat are still piled on racks being stored. I think we're supposed to store them 5 years. It's actually been more than 5 years, but I'm pretty sure they're still there. It's just immensely difficult to deal with all of this paper. And so with Survey CTO, it's been interesting. We started here in India with some projects moving to digital data collection. We've since been used in over 50 countries by, I would say, well over 1,000 projects, and by a number of different types of organizations. So we started out with Center for Microfinance, JPAL South Asia, some other research organizations here within a core network in India. And then we went and branched out around the world. Innovations for Poverty Action, JPAL, work in a lot of different countries. World Bank has impact evaluations in different countries. And slowly but surely, different types of organizations, public health organizations started moving to digital. They call it mHealth. And so this movement from the sort of paper and pencil-based methods to digital has been particularly rapid within the public health sector. But then, from large organizations, research organizations, universities, but then down to now more local NGOs, more and more people are making this shift. And we find that there are very, very similar lessons that are being learned by all of these organizations and operating in many, many different settings, urban areas, rural areas, so many different settings, but there are consistent lessons that have emerged, and I wanted to share a few of those today, and we can talk about more in the discussion. But the first thing is that enumerator jobs are really hard. So I think many of us who are like principal investigators or who work on research projects will go visit the field on a day with good weather, and we'll hire a car, and everything will seem like, oh, this is easy. We'll sit in on 1 interview or 2 interviews. Oh, this is easy, stuff. But the people who do this work day in, day out, no matter what the weather is, the weather is difficult, traveling is difficult, finding the right respondents is often difficult, when and how to ask the right questions is often difficult. And there are many, many, many temptations that are faced by the people doing this work. And it's because they're human. The people doing this work are human beings. And, some of them may sit under a tree. The classic image is someone sitting under a tree faking interviews, or they're on the bus traveling to the village and they're filling out the survey booklets. But, it's much more common, we find, that there's a lot of effort to find exactly the right respondent. There are 50 people in this village with essentially the same name, and you're looking for one of them, and it takes a long time, and it's very frustrating. So it's easy to end up just interviewing the wrong respondent if you just put in a little less effort. Or auto-answering questions. So, sometimes there's a question like, have you taken a loan in the last 12 months? And if you answer no to that question, it's a very happy thing because you get to move on. And if the respondent says yes to this question, then there's like another 30 minutes of, what was the interest rate? What did you do with this loan? There's just a world of hurt that descends. And it's the end of the day, you're exhausted, your respondent has, sick children screaming, why not say no? So the temptation there is very, very strong. And then also, from a research point of view, or from the government point of view, you may know that only 1 in 100 people is going to answer a certain way to a question. And most people answer one way, very few people answer another way. From your point of view, looking at the total data set, the 1 in 100 answer is important to you. Is it 1%? Is it 2%? That's important. From an enumerator point of view, you ask this question 20 times. It's been a week you've been asking this question. Every time they say the same thing. You get to think, it's actually wrong to keep bothering people, asking them this question, when you know the answer to this question. So this sort of auto-answering thing, it's very subtle. It's not, they're not malicious. They don't think of themselves as committing fraud or violating the integrity of the research or anything else. They're just human beings. So knowing that these things happen and knowing that this is the reality, you have to sort of design things in a certain way. And so, and these are some of the areas where digital technologies really help us. So things like skipping irrelevant questions. So following the right skip patterns, figuring out which questions get asked, so following the instructions of, this module is only asked of these people under these circumstances, like figuring all that out is incredibly difficult, and it is a lot of work for people. So you can reduce this work by programming this into the survey so that, it knows this is a 12-year-old girl or this is a, 40-year-old male, and so I don't need to ask a bunch of questions about pregnancy. You can build in checks. You can constrain responses. So if they put in 222 for the age, you can say, no, that's not a valid age. And they probably just hit the 2 button an extra time. It was probably 22. So you can catch these things so that they don't have to be spending all night, reviewing their surveys to catch all of these things and fix all of these things. So, in particular, you can design for monitoring and create incentives. So there are field management systems, and I think many of you in this room, I'm sure, know better than I do the field management procedures for field supervisors, checking in on your interviewers. You might do back checks or revisits where some percentage of households you go send somebody else afterwards to check did this enumerator visit, did they not visit? You might ask them a few random questions and then check the responses against the original responses to see did they ask these questions. But these things are highly, highly imperfect methods of monitoring. I mean, they're sort of the best you could do in the paper and pencil world. But in the digital world, you can do things like audio recording. So there's one guy at JPAL a couple years ago who said to me once, when we were using digital technology, he said, these devices, they all have microphones. Why don't you turn them on? And it was sort of such a simple idea. And we thought about it, we're like, yeah, I guess we could turn the microphones on. And so we added a feature where you could set up and say, okay, well, for 5% of interviews or 10% or whatever, at some random point or focused on a certain area that you're particularly concerned about, audio record at random some portion of the survey and save that. And you can also do things we call speed limits, where you can say, this is another sort of simple thing, you say, hey, well, if they're moving through the survey too quickly, that's kind of suspicious. And so you can have the tablet or the phone record, automatically flag these interviews and say, they were moving too quickly. And in fact, you can have it automatically turn on the microphone when it sees this kind of behavior, so that later when you're looking at the data, you can see this guy spent only, 3 milliseconds on this question, and you can also listen in to hear, okay, well, was he just a really fast talker, and or was there, something else going on? Were they not actually interviewing anyone at all? You can record the GPS positions and automatically calculate the distance between where you think the interview should have taken place and where the interview did take place. You can have automated checks where you check this kind of yes/no question of did you take a loan in the last 12 months? You can set something up to very easily just monitor statistically and say, okay, well, tell me when there's an enumerator or a team that's answering this question systematically differently. So, if you've got one guy who's out there and for some reason, 90% of people say no, they haven't taken a loan in the last 12 months, but everybody else is, around 20%. Then that's something that you want to follow up on. And so, these kinds of things, there are all kinds of ways in which you can use this digital technology so that you can facilitate the monitoring, the review process, and also create the right incentives. When people know that they're being audio recorded at random, you can even, for example, have everybody listen together to some of the audio recordings at the end of the week as a learning exercise. And nobody wants to be embarrassed that they were skipping questions or they were not asking the questions properly. So you don't need to fire people, you don't need to create a lot of drama. You just, by instituting these kind of quality control procedures, you incentivize them to do the best work that they can do. And create the structure that will give you the kind of data that you want. have time during dinner, I hope that we'll have more discussion both between us and you, but then also amongst you. So plenty of time for more discussion. I want to, as I promised, very quickly circle back to the sort of, so of course, all right, here I am again with my same problem as before. So I want to thank our panelists again for participating, and yeah, let's move to So just very, very briefly, we had a lot of debates here about like how much we should tell you about Survey CTO or Dubility, and how much of it would be torture for you and how much of it would be potentially valuable. So we agreed on a very, very, very short overview, and we're happy to talk further. Malik is here. We have a website. We're very happy to talk about Survey CTO day and night. But very briefly, Dubility is a mission-driven company. The idea behind our company, I was involved in technology from practically the age of birth on up. I was a technologist. I left technology and I left business for a long time because I decided that I wanted to pursue more social goals. I was interested in development. I spent 10 years away from technology and business. Got 3 degrees in public policy, and started trying to actually do things in the social sector. And I realized that actually technology and business has a place, has a role. And now Dubility is essentially a combination of sort of my social interests and my understanding of economics and my understanding of technology. So we're all about promoting more affordable, reliable, and supported technology that actual humans can use. So as I mentioned earlier, we sort of grew out of a development economics project here in India. We needed to use digital technologies. And the key thing is there was an IT team to help us, but it just didn't seem like if the field team couldn't manage the technology stuff for themselves, like they wouldn't fix the problems in the survey. So for example, whenever you try your best, but when you start launching your survey, you discover you messed up this translation, or this thing is not right, or this option is missing. You discover these things when you're in the field, and you need to be able to adapt, and that's a key thing. And if you've got a technology team 500 kilometers away, it's much more difficult to adapt. And so the goal was to take this technology that was very promising, there were open source options available, and make it both cheap but also accessible and manageable by our team. So Survey CTO is a mobile data collection platform, one of many that's available out there. It's built on a particular open source platform, OpenDataKit, which has become very common and has many different variations in the world. The idea is you design your survey forms, you deploy them, you collect data, you submit the data. We're very big on encryption and data privacy and those things. So we have institutional review boards that govern academic work at the very least. And I know here in India you have very strong institutional review boards, particularly in the public health and medical areas. So encryption is important, data security is important. Our tools, we focus a lot on data quality, which is why we were excited to hold this event. And we're trying to also make data very visible for people and visible more quickly and more easily. So this is a sort of blurry version of Server Console. Just gives you an idea of the web interface that you use to manage your survey forms. For each survey form, you can preview the form, you can edit the form. When you edit the form, we're getting closer and closer to SurveyMonkey type of, big button, add a question, what's the type of the question, you say what type. If it's an audio recording or an audit field or something, then you say it's an audit field. So the interface, and this is one of these things where the entire industry, we're moving it easier and easier to use. This is really our form designer, our drag and drop designer is only 3 or 4 months old. Took us a while to develop this. There's another mode that people use in Excel where they use spreadsheets to define their forms. Also, we thought that was quite easy, but as we broadened the base of people who were using the technology, we found, well, Excel isn't easy enough. And so we moved to this drag and drop type interface. We invested a lot in having a web interface for previewing forms. not necessarily because we cared about web surveys, although now we have many users using us for web surveys, but because it was really kind of a pain to constantly be pushing the survey as we're developing and testing it to a device and swiping around and filling out the same survey 300 times in order to test and make sure it's all working properly. It was a lot easier in the web browser on the computer to do this sort of testing and revision. But there's an app, obviously, we have an app that works offline for filling out surveys. We'll have during dinner tonight, I think there'll be a couple of people with these tablets asking you a few questions about your potential interest in future events. They'll be operating offline, filling out surveys using the app, and they'll send all that data. We have a mobile hotspot we'll use to transmit all the data, and then we'll look at that then. So, by the time you guys go home tonight, we'll be looking at, okay, what's the level of interest for these different types of event that we might hold in the future. And with the desktop application, many people now download data directly from the website, but if you're encrypting your data, if it's sensitive data, we have a desktop application to make it easy to sync to an external drive and then decrypt on a cold room computer if it's a very, very secure data and you can't view that data on an internet accessible computer. So some of you, if you collect super sensitive data, you'll need to use a desktop app, but we've tried to make it as easy as possible. You say, where's the data coming from? Where's it going to? You hit go, it asks you for your password, and it synchronizes and does whatever it needs to do. So that's basically Survey CTO in brief. I want to thank you all, and I want to hand back to Parthvi, who got us started and will